You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. Your love changes There's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing.
Good morning, Rooted Men. Pleasure to see you this morning, Matt Ryan, Firmly Rooted Ministries. It's a joy to be with you as always, these Friday mornings that I get to join you as we dig into the Word. You know, we talked a lot at men's group last night. We talked a lot in general, but we hit home on a point that I thought was pretty powerful. For those of you that were there, you know, you're going to know, but we talked about or had this realization about how we often live our lives upside down and get things twisted. And it came from a point that Steve G made, you know, when he talked about, you know, when we go through our day and, you know, I'll pray if I have time. I'll read the Bible if I have time. And that's this idea of, you know, we start with this kind of full day and we are deciding what we're going to do in every minute of it. And if I get to the end and I have time for you, God, you know, you understand I'm busy. I'll get there. And it really, you know, drove the point home to me of how much my life has changed for the better when I first read the Bible several years ago because I met Tom. And Tom got tired of listening to me for a couple of years saying how I've never read it. I don't know what it says and whatever. And since then, he helped me build this habit, both Tom and a couple of other men who were in the men's group. Gosh, it was back at the 18 Washington, so it's probably been 4 or 5 years. But, you know, a couple other men who told their stories about how much it changed their lives to start every day in the Word, to start every day in prayer. And I'll be honest, I still don't have the habit of prayer, which is funny because I think I'm viewed as a person who has maybe a strong prayer life because of this thing of the intercessory prayer that I can do for other people. But I find it a lot harder to pray over myself. Anyway, another aside, but it's just this interesting thing when we turn our day upside down from what the world tells us to do. And when we say, no, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start, whether it be in prayer or in the Word or whatever it is that's adjusting my heart for the day, I'm going to be set up to have a better day because of it. You know, Phil told this great story that maybe he'll tell you sometime about how this kind of God smacked him in the face with this one day. It's pretty entertaining. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm so happy to start this day with you and to start in this habit that we're doing together, that we really are who we say we are, that we really are being firmly rooted in this Word and digging in together. And so today we continue through 2 Corinthians. Now, as you all know, of course, 1 Corinthians was somewhat of a harsh letter, a very corrective letter from Paul to the church, correcting a lot of behavior. And 2 Corinthians starts as a return visit, at least apparently, one of what we believe was 3 that he made, because Titus told him how well his first letter was being received and how well the believers were doing at kind of realigning themselves to, again, fight this fight that we still fight today, all these centuries later, of snipping the roots in the old kingdom, of snipping away from the pagan rituals, from the worshiping other gods, from all the things that were normal part of society at that time, from going back to following Jewish law, right? Snip those roots one at a time, replant them in this kingdom. This is the same way that Paul preached all these years ago. And so as he's been going through, you know, he's dealing with kind of 2 things. One is the joy about the church kind of reforming itself because of his first letter. And also the detractors, you know, have grown stronger. And where he's starting here with verse 11, where it says, we've spoken freely to you, Corinthians. Our heart is wide open. You are not restricted by us, but you are restricted in your own affections. In return, I speak as to children. Widen your hearts also. And here, Paul's understanding affection is something that can only be given. It cannot be taken forcefully, right? It might be inspired to be given back to you. But he wants to impress upon these people, right? That he's acting out of a love for them, and he wants to help them widen their hearts because this is good for you, because we were created to be in community, because you're created to love first. This is what's good for you. Trust me. Which then leads into, when your hearts are open, this temple of the living God section, which really is more what we're going to focus on today. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. How many have heard that before? I know I have thought about it a lot. Almost always in my life, I've thought about it in the context of marriage, because I think that is the most intimate of yokes, right? The most intimate of relationships. The most meaningful one that you build your life around, right? You're truly sacrificing your identity to become one with another. But I think here we got to be careful that this isn't just talking about marriage, right? For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? And I don't need to read the whole thing here, right? You can continue to read, but the idea of being unequally yoked can extend to a friendship, can extend to a working partnership, right? It can extend to anyone who we're kind of letting in that inner circle in our heart, we're vulnerable to, or we are trusting of, or someone whose word carries weight with us. The one way that I've said before, there's a psychologist that I listen to who's just amazing, who talks about we get to decide who gets to hurt us, because we can look at each relationship in our life and say, this is somebody who can speak that way to me, and this is someone who cannot, right? And when it's coming from someone who cannot, who I haven't given that permission to, it doesn't matter. It rolls off my back. When it's coming from someone I've allowed in my circle, that critique can hit heavy, right? And I think that's what we're talking about with being yoked. Being trusting, fully committed to a friendship, or whatever it may be that's brought the two of you together, that being unequally yoked can be dangerous. And the reason is because then that opens that temptation, the temptation to be recommitting your life, or reforming, or identifying by the wrong world standards. Because when you start to build somebody up and trust what they're saying, but they're not speaking the same language as you, they're not coming from the same spot as you, how can that be beneficial? So the natural question is, does that mean I shouldn't talk to non-believers? I shouldn't work with them. I shouldn't hire them. I shouldn't allow them to teach my children. I shouldn't be neighbors with them. I think you see where I'm going. Of course, it doesn't mean that, because it can't mean that. Because we're called to see everybody as God sees them, right? To see people through Jesus' eyes, and not be a judge that decides whether or not they're worthy of our relationship. But that doesn't mean we can't guard our hearts. We can't proceed with caution and understand that when a person says something who doesn't share the same worldview as me, their conclusion doesn't weigh the same as if it would if it came from somebody who does, right? And that's where we can be discerning and understand, what inputs am I taking? Am I allowing somebody who doesn't believe the same as me to form my opinions, to form my judgments about the world, to help to develop what I get passionate about, right? This could never be easier than in our current time, right? Hearing all of the lies that are just so mind-numbing in every commercial break, over and over and over again, right? And once you kind of tune that stuff out and go, like Steve also said, I think tonight in Bible study, or last night, it's not tonight in any way, it was last night. You start to realize that none of them are on your side. None of them are speaking from a place where you're speaking from, right? We're not having fruitful conversation in love with a brother or sister in Christ, right? They're trying to sell something. And we just have to be careful about how it stirs us and how it moves our hearts. And I think that's really what Paul's getting at, right? Part of this whole idea of making your body a temple, right, means there are things I'm not going to do, right? I'm not going to go to a strip club and pray for the people that are there, right? Maybe I go in the parking lot or when I drive by, right? I'm not going to, in their day, go to a temple that has an idol in it to another god just to share a meal with the people there and say that's ministry, that's me reaching out. No, I have to have boundaries, because I am a temple. So I'm not going to be caught dead, so to speak, living in a way or acting in a way where I can conceive of it and control it that violates, my covenant. Shouldn't even say my covenant, but it violates the relationship I have with my Father. Another thing we talked about was I don't know how to gauge whether I'm a good Christian or not. I think that the only thing that Christians are called to do is be faithful. So if I'm faithful, then I must be a good Christian, even though it's hard for us to say that. But what I'm probably not good at is being a son, because I think about how often I break my Father's heart when I choose to do things that are self-serving. I choose to do things that he wouldn't want me to do because he knows better and he sees the path, and I just keep not taking it. And I keep, like a dog returning to his vomit, I keep returning to these old habits that keep not working, and they get me frustrated, but they're what I know and I'm comfortable with, and I just keep doing it. And he so desperately wants me to come to him, to ask for that forgiveness that comes through repentance and brokenness at the foot of the cross, and says, I'm sorry. I need to be in relationship with you for me, because I am not doing this well on my own. I can't do it well on my own, even though the world tells me I should. And everything in my psyche tells me it's up to me. I am fully reliant on you, Father. I don't know. I hope that's a good word for you, man. I truly hope that in any way it can, it sets you free. Free from some expectations you might have in yourself. Free from guilt you might carry. But I hope it helps you to set healthy boundaries and to say, it's okay that there are things I'm not going to do. There's non-negotiables for me. And that's what it means when we say, it's for me and my house will serve the Lord, right? I'm going to draw a line in the sand here. Even if there's something I've been doing that I know I shouldn't be doing all my life, I'm going to move forward trying my best not to do it anymore. Not because it gets me into heaven, but because it helps me to be in the right perspective, to have my life in the right order instead of being upside down, because I'm coming to you, my Father, first. Help me figure this out. I think that is a takeaway we can all benefit from. Man, I hope you have a great day. I hope that this weekend, again, I always say this kind of thing, but I really do mean it, because I'm always moved by the world that God created for us to enjoy. And I just hope that there's some joy in it for you, whatever fall is for you. For me, it's definitely my favorite season. That's part of because the weather and the apples and cider and the bonfires and the football. But it's always the excitement of just for us being around family all the time, more intentional than we are at other times of the year. Anyway, I hope that I was going to be done 3 minutes ago, and here I keep going. So I'm going to be done now. Let's have a great day, man. Let's make it a firmly rooted day. And may someone see Jesus in us today. Peace.